Esteemed United Nations Special Rapporteur, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ulrich Gester. I am member of the board of the Inner City Church District. It's a great honor and pleasure to welcome Mr. Pedro Arrojo, UN Special Rapporteur on the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation here in the Wasserkirche, which means water church. A year ago, we from the Inner City Church District of Zurich, together with Blue Community and HEX, organized a water week, which was then, due to the pandemic, conducted mainly in digital form. We are delighted to be able to hold this year a water week, which takes its cue from World Water Day on March 22nd, live and with few visitors. The Wasserkirche seems like a fitting place for our series of events. Even today, the church protrudes far into the limit. During the medieval times, the church was located on a small island in the river. The predecessor of today's Gothic building was stately eroded by the river's current lapping at its foundations. An anecdote that may serve to illustrate the power of water. Water is of course central to survival on our planet, be it for plants, animal life or human beings. All things come from water. Without water, nothing can survive. Historically and politically, water was always been committed and often falls over resource. We are looking forward to hear from you, Mr. Arrojo, more on today's situation regarding the worldwide rights and access to water, not least concerning access to drinking water. I fear that our global situation is anything but pleasant. Before closing, I would like to draw your attention to the scenographer Mort van Giese's installation, which envisions water masses rushing into the Wasserkirche. The installation also includes videos by Silas Scotch, who has captured the flaw of the limit in cinematic impressions. Please welcome now with me Mrs. Lisa Krebs from Blue Community.
Thank you very much, Ulrich Gerster, for your welcoming here at the Water Church in Zurich, and also for your readiness to open the Water Church for the Water Week in Zurich 2022. Dear Mr. Arrojo-Aguda, dear guests, I also warmly welcome you to this opening event of the Water Week 2022. As mentioned before, my name is Lisa Krebs. I am the coordinator of the Blue Communities in Switzerland. I have this mandate within the frame of my employment at the Reformed Churches Bern, Jura, Solothurn. I won't take too much time. I know you are here to listen to the UN Special Rapporteur on the right to water and sanitation. But I would like to briefly put this event into the context of our series of events and introduce you to Blue Community. Blue Community is the reason for this Water Week. Blue Community is an international initiative for water as human right and public good. 2009, it was founded in Canada. At this time, the Canadian government had the idea to make profit out of its water wealth. The prominent and well-known co-founder of Blue Community is Maud Barlow. She served, amongst others, as Senior Advisor on Water to the 63rd President of the UN General Assembly and she was also a leading person in the campaign for the human right to water and sanitation at the UN. By the time she was also chairing the Council of Canadians, Canada's largest social and environmental organization, and she founded the Blue Community as a very simple instrument for the local fight for access to water, or in other words, for water as human right and public good. The initiative is very simple. Each Blue Community does respect 4 core principles: recognizing water and sanitation as human rights, promoting publicly financed, owned and operated water and wastewater services, banning or phasing out the sale of bottled water, cultivating public-public partnerships with international partners and advocating the right to water at the international level. Blue Community has no legal form. It is a self-commitment. It is a self-commitment to the just mentioned principles. Each Blue Community has to respect each principle. 2013, the project was launched in Switzerland by the Reformed Churches Bern Jura-Solothurn, and with the courage and conviction of Johannes in Bern. They became the first Blue communities not only in Switzerland but also in Europe. Today we have almost 40 Blue communities in Switzerland. These are cities, universities, NGOs, workers' unions, etc. Almost half of the Blue communities have a church character, or a parish, or this kind of character. Worldwide, the movement has about 150 members, amongst others also very prominent members such as Paris or Berlin or Montreal. Now, today we are here thanks to the initiative of the Blue communities in Zurich. These are the Workers' Union VPOD Zurich, the NGO HEC, Swiss Church Aid, the City of Dietikon, and the Reformed Church of Zurich. This Water Week is a concrete example of a Blue community activity. One of the Blue community's aim is to raise awareness for important water topics at the local level, but also to discuss water challenges here in Switzerland or even locally in Zurich. The World Water Day is held on March 22, next week. The decision to hold this International Water Day was taken 30 years ago in Rio at the Earth Summit in 1992. On the one hand, the World Water Day is a moment to pause, to realize the importance of access to clean water, to safe sanitation, but also to realize, even here in Switzerland, that access to water must be not taken for granted, if it is our water quality. On the Water Day is also a moment to raise the voice and to protest that access to clean water, this essential good, is still not yet guaranteed for more than 2.2 billion people worldwide. Worldwide, the Water Day is supported by numerous civil-based organizations, but of course also by government institutions and UN agencies. And therefore we are very happy that you, Pedro, Arrojo-Aguda, that you are here with us. It is an honor to have the highest guardian of the human right to water here for the opening of the Water Week in Zurich, and we are looking now forward to your message to the World Water Day 2022.
It's a great honor for me to be here with you. Well, as you may know, I was appointed special rapporteur a year ago, so I'm new. I'm learning how to deal with this great honor. great honor. At the same time, a challenge as overwhelming as it is exciting for me. Thank you very much. So, and during this year, I'm learning, and I think I will continue to learn for the whole time I am in the church. It is for 3 years, but then if the rapporteur want to continue, automatically is 3 more. So normally it's for 6 years, okay? Well, I will present to you perhaps I have half an hour, as a great honor, and I will present the main concerns, the main ideas, and the working plan I have for the first years, and open the debate, and you choose which questions are the most interesting for you. Okay. I used to say in my first thematic report, we present 2 reports every year, The one is around mid-September before the Human Rights Council in Geneva. The second one is 1 month later, mid-October, normally, before the UN General Assembly in New York. So the first report I presented last year in Geneva was analyzing what is the general context, the state of the affair, of the question of the water and sanitation around the world. And as I used to do, I employ some kind of, could be a provocative presentation of the situation. I used to say, and I say here, we face, among others, very special global crisis, as grave as it is paradoxical. I talk about the global water crisis on the water planet, the blue planet. With those 2 billion people, more than 2 billion people without guaranteed access to safe drinking water, people who are the most, at least, for the most part, and of course, with the exception of arid territories that with climate change could be in some decades perhaps uninhabitable, and in this case, of course, there is a physical lack of water for living, But when we talk about these 2 billion people, the vast majority are not properly thirsty people without water in their living environments. They are properly impoverished people living close to a polluted river, a polluted aquifer, polluted lake. At least this is my general diagnosis. So I used to say the main roots of this global crisis lie in the confluence of 2 structural flaws in our way of life, in our socioeconomic systems. The first flaw, I think, is the flaw of inequity and poverty that we have generated and we generate at present from my point of view, profoundly unjust, unfair and moral socioeconomic systems, is my point of view. And the second flaw is the flaw of unsustainability that we have provoked in our aquatic ecosystems, turning water from being, I used to say, the blue soul of life, from being the key of the life we know in this planet, into the most terrible vector of disease and death ever known by the humanity in the 21st century. On the basis of this diagnosis, from my point of view, I propose 2 axes on which to focus our efforts. The first one is, I used to say in this expression, to make peace with our rivers, with our lakes, with our aquifers, to make peace with them. Because I am sure, I insist on this, if we do not are able to restore the health and functionality of these ecosystems, rivers, wetlands, aquifers, lakes, on which these communities, these 2 billion people need to supply themselves in a daily basis. If we do not able to improve the health of these ecosystems, it is not possible to make real progress in achieving, in getting safe drinking water for these people. I think it's some kind of two challenges, confluent challenges, the one of recovering the good ecological state of these ecosystems and the one of achieving the universal access to safe drinking water for these people and for everybody. You know. Well, the second issue, the second axe working for our efforts in front of facing this global crisis is promoting, from my point of view, democratic governance of water as a common good. I will talk about this, but the challenge we face with this global water crisis, I used to say, is not a business opportunity. I'm sorry. These 2 billion people are not a good opportunity for making good deals, good profits. They are impoverished people. They cannot afford for nothing. So from my point of view, we are facing with this question a democratic and ethical challenge. A democratic and ethical challenge, not a business opportunity. This is my point of view. So we have making peace with the rivers, and aquifers and so on, and building democratic governance of water as a common good. To understand that I am telling you, I propose to you a quick ethical reflection. Very usually when I talk about this and I ask for reflection, ethical issues, there's always, very, very often, people coming from, law professionals that say it's not you a leader. But usually they say to me, Pedro, ethical questions are not the key questions because it's nice, but it's not effective. We must talk about laws, about, not ethical principles. And so in this sense I say, okay, let's talk on legal framework, but under ethical principles. Okay? Well, last year, if you remember, the year and the World Water Day, 22nd March, was devoted on, we asked from the UN Water, we asked everybody to reflect on the value of water. And there was just at that moment I was appointed, and I proposed nearly the first day talking instead of the value of water, the values of water. Because this is very important. When we talk about value, we are talking about, yes, could be very different functions, but in money, how much is it? What is the cost? The cost. What is the value? And they say, no, let's talk on values of water. They say, look, the water has not just a multifunction, multi-values at stake, but if we try to compare the ones and the others, we can find that it's not possible to compare. For instance, I give you an example. How can you compare the value that for you have with respect to regarding the water, the minimum amount of water you need in your family for a dignified life? How much water, how much do you think is the value of this water if you compare it with the value of the water we need for filling legitimately a swimming pool? If you reflect on this, you say, I cannot compare it. How do you compare the value of the love you have for your son and the value of this computer? It's not just to say is more value or less value. I cannot compare. It's another level. Ethically is another question. So we can talk about priorities, yes, but their value in the sense of having a measure for the one and the other is not possible. This is a very special question for water. So this is the reason, because I used to say we need to reflect on proposing different ethical category. And in this sense, I used to propose to have the distinction between the uses and functions that I call the water for life, first, top priority. I will talk then what does I mean with this. The second level, the water in uses and functions that are declared, are decided as under the public interest of the community or the society. The third level, the water for economic development, yes, legitimate, but in the third level, not the first one, you know. And even finally, I talk about water uses that threaten life. I used to say in Spanish, agua delito, water crime or crime water, no? So, shortly, each kind of ethical level. What can I mean with water for life? Well, for instance, the uses and functions of water as a life support system, you know, for humans and for life in general also, you know. For instance, the minimum amount of water we need to guarantee drinking water and sanitation as human rights. This is water for life. That doesn't make sense to talk about scarcity for justifying that we have not enough water for human rights. That doesn't make sense, because how much water we can decide is the minimum amount for a dignified life and so on. The Supreme Court, I think in Colombia, talked about, I think, 60 liters per person day. Doesn't matter, could be 100, could be 50. In this kind of amount of water, do you know how much water it represents in comparison with the water we are extracting, we are deriving from the rivers and aquifers? No more than 5%. No river will dry because of extracting 5% of the water we are extracting at present. So if we make priority on the human right to water and sanitation, there is no possible scarcity. Well, exception, arid, semi-arid, extreme arid, under climate change. Okay, this is a very specific space, no? Another, the water needed to produce the food that communities in vulnerable situations need for the food they need for the life. So it's the human right to food. It's not a big amount of water, it's a short amount. And even, this could be more water. The water, the flows and the water quality necessary to guarantee the sustainability, the health of rivers, of lakes, the environmental needs. This could be more, but it is also linked to human rights at present, because now we have recognized this year, less than 1 year ago, the human right to healthy environment. So healthy rivers is something already recognized. So this kind of uses and functions for me is water for life. And this is the top priority because it's the base of life. The second level is the uses of public interest. I gave in some examples, but yes, if a society, a community decide that this building is an heritage to protect in the name, on behalf of the public interest of the building, well, it is a priority. In water issues, we have a lot of uses that are declared as democratically as public interest of the society. The third one, the economic development, of course, in productive activities. In this case, yes, it is the 80–90% of the water demands are for activities, economic activities, mainly agricultural activities, irrigation, but also industry and so on. It's legitimate, but it's not the first priority. It is not fair to say, well, I put in Paraguay, I want to make paper, no? And well, I pollute the river but I'm building economy and jobs for people and so on. No, but there is no justification for poisoning the people living downstream. There is no legitimacy for this. So in this sense, is a third level, the economic development. And in this case, yes, we can build scarcity. We can build scarcity. We have built scarcity for many things. Now at present, we can say that the atmosphere is scarce. Climate change. If the atmosphere were bigger, with more capacity of digesting or avoiding the climate change, but it is scarce for us. Or the planet is scarce. We need 5 times the planet. And the rivers are scarce. So God was wrong? I don't know. If you think from a religious point of view, he has built a planet that is scarce for humanity. Or perhaps we have a problem. Instead of scarcity, we have kind of excedent of ambition, lack of prudence, lack of being reasonable and recognizing the limits for living in this planet. I think more than talking about scarcity, we have to recognize the limits of the planet and the limits for sustainability. And talking about water crime or the water uses that threaten life, for instance, open pit mining, toxic, that put in danger the health and the life, not just for the present generation, but the next and the next and the next generation. This is not legitimate. This is a use of water that is not legitimate. It must be illegal and be avoided at all costs. This is my point of view. So if we are able to organize this kind of priorities, of course we will need to manage scarcity problems, but more in the sense of limiting our ambition, sometimes productive ambition, generally of the richest one. No? But is not legitimate, is not right, is not fair to talk about scarcity for justifying the non-compliance with human rights, for instance. That doesn't make sense properly. Under this approach, ethical approach, in summary, we need to build a sustainable and democratic water governance from a human right-based approach. But for this, if we continue to reflect, market logic is not the right tool. I am not against market reasonability. It's good for, depending for what. It's like if I say, what about hammer? Yeah, hammer, no martillo. Huh? You are pro-hammer or anti-hammer? You say, well, depending for what doing with this. It is for nailing, for it's okay. But is it for putting in your head? Is a bad question. No, it's not. Or for walking is bad. So I think a market is not the right tool for dealing with this kind of these ethical principles. And in this sense, I used to say in Spain we have an expression, a lema, that says, no hay que pedirle peras a un olmo. In English is something that don't ask pears from an elm tree. You must ask for pears to a pear tree. No? This is the question. We cannot ask market for dealing with human rights, but not because market is perverse and bad. No, it's for another thing. It's not the right instrument for dealing with this, for dealing with a democratic water governance. Well, from the neoliberal vision, that is true. From the neoliberal vision, it is considered that water is an economic resource, is a scarce and useful resource, so it's an economic resource to be managed as a commodity. This is the general approach. No? But this approach has, of course, opened up business opportunities in the privatization of services, the well-known. Also in many countries, and I talk on this in my first thematic report to the UN General Assembly, to sell and purchase not properly water, but the right to use water, the concessional rights. In Spain, it's possible to, as it was a property. In the States, it's possible to do it. In Australia, in Chile, was the first country to do it, with Pinochet at the beginning. So this kind of commodification of water is another trend, another option. And finally, is something very, very concerning from my point of view, not just as a mere commodity, but in the last time, finally, water has been considered, and is being considered as an asset, financial asset in the water futures in Wall Street, under speculative logic. Perhaps in the dialogue we can talk about this, because it's one of the questions I've proposed as an international debate on this, even if we have not, for the moment, this question here. But is this is happening in the States? It will come in one way or another. So it's good to be aware, it's good to reflect on this, it is the right way, under the perspective of dealing better with water scarcity, with climate change. There is speculation on the future in order to prevent the future, with climate change. We will talk a little bit on this question. So privatization, commodification, and financialization are in fact three different but closely linked concepts around the view of water as a simple economic good. That is the basic issue. This approach to water has always, for me, has been very concerning in general. But when, as I said before, I was appointed as a rapporteur, I had just been, I have received the news that California water is traded in the Wall Street future markets. I therefore decided to propose to the General Assembly in the UN in New York to propose a debate on the financialization of water and commodification. In recent decades, I don't know if you are, because it's not just for water, it's very grave, and I am proposing to other mandates to make some kind of working together. The Vatican told me we are also interested perhaps in deepening in this debate the financialization and human rights, the speculative strategies and human rights, not just for water, but also for food and others. No? And so it suggests this possibility because I want to continue to work on this and to understand better, for me also, I try to understand better and to propose something interesting around. No? In the recent decades, the financialization of the economy in general has transformed, if you reflect a little, banks from being institutions that provide savings and lending services for productive activities, they are transformed into institutions that govern the entire economy under the dominance of speculative strategies that try to maximize short-term benefits, profits, even if this in fact entails serious damage not only on the poorest, but also to the productive economy. When you have a bubble, the financial bubble with housing, for instance, is not good for the economy. It's a disaster for the poor people. It's a disaster. But for the whole economy, it's also is not positive. Because of this kind of strategies, are not in good coherence, even with the traditional logic of the market. And there are more and more economists saying, what are we doing with this deregulation of the financial markets at the end of the 20th century? Well, the entry of water into Wall Street future markets means managing its value, as I said, as a financial asset under the speculative logic that dominates these markets. And I try to explain, you have the report, so I invite you to read even perhaps the friendly version is easiest to read. Future markets have traditionally existed, there has been spaces where producers and large traders negotiate prices through commodity futures contracts that allow them to reduce the risks associated with future uncertainties, performing functions of price discovery is the technical term, and price stabilization. Well, could be interesting in general. But since 1990s, financial deregulation allowed banks and other powerful financial players to speculate with commodity, basic commodity, food, under very poor regulatory control. In that context, commodities, and particularly food products, entered in the portfolios of major investors who increased very quickly, increased their investment in food and commodity futures. Look, the figures, from 13 billion in 2003 to 317 billions, so multiply by 30 billion in 2008, the same year that the housing bubble burst, and these big banks raised massive amounts of public money, funds to avoid bankruptcy. The result of this speculative strategy, in some months, more than 350 billion. I think the billions in Spanish is difficult because a billion in Spanish is a million of millions, and in English, a thousand of million. Well, this huge amount of money devoted to rise wheat in 3 months, 4 months. So the results was a speculative strategy in this kind of markets, and the result of this strategy, far from stabilizing prices as promised, there was increased volatility and a new price bubble, this time in basic foodstuff. The price of corn tripled in some months. Wheat rose 127% more expensive, rice 170% more expensive in 2-3 months. And as a extreme consequence, another nearly 2 100 million people join the rank of hunger and extreme poverty, according to the World Bank. This was the consequence. So this is the kind of strategy in which they are proposing to deal with the value of water. Thinking on climate change, very dangerous. We must take into account that large banks and institutional investors were and are neither producers for food, for instance, nor traders, nor consumers. They simply speculate. As has been proved along the last 2 decades, poorly regulated future markets work under the strength of the speculative expectation created by these powerful players, and not on the real present or expected supply and demand signals of the products, of the water, of the food. This is the key issue. Is an economy under the base a casino, but it's not, in the corner for the people who want to take risks. No, it's for the whole economy. It's for your money. It's for all of us. So dangerous. And for the most impoverished, of course. So this is why at the end of my report to the UN General Assembly I propose, rather than allowing the trading of water on future markets, we should manage, I read directly, water as a public good, ensure sustainable management and develop participatory climate change adaptation plans, as recommended by all experts and the UN, in order to guarantee the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation, among other questions. No one among the experts, among the international institutions, are proposing for the water in the future, the risk of scarcity with climate change. Let's go on the speculative strategies on the market. No one is telling this. We are talking about public participation in planning with public participation under human rights-based approach. And, well, I have no time to continue this way. Let us now turn our attention to climate change, if you want. Today, finally, we have got a general consensus, I used to say, that the use of fossil fuels as the main source of greenhouse gas emissions is the main driver of climate change. And therefore, no one discusses that the energy transition should preside over mitigation strategies. So, I insist on this, and in Glasgow I was insisting on this. However, I said, and I continue to say, little attention is paid to the fact that the main social impacts of climate change are generated around the water vector. And this is why I insist that requires that adaptation strategies be dominated by the hydrological transition. And I write on this, what does it mean, hydrological transition? I have no time for being more precise. Hydrological transition, in any case, that must be based on strengthening 2 fronts. Strengthening environmental resilience, and strengthening, on the other hand, social resilience to the risks generated by climate change. Well, strengthening environmental resilience involve restoring and maintaining the good ecological status of aquatic ecosystems, especially the most inertial pieces of the water cycle, that is, wetlands and aquifers, as well as the vegetal coverage of territories, which will increase ecosystem capacities for storing water and softening floods. Especially with regard to aquifers, as the water lungs, I used to use this expression, the water lungs of nature, it is necessary to put an urgent and radical end to the process of overexploitation and pollution in many sensitive areas of these aquifers, so that they can also be used as strategic reserves for future extraordinary droughts. And I insist on this. And this 22nd March, we are insisting on this. The aquifers are key elements for dealing with the risks of droughts in the future, you know. On this basis, it will be essential to promote, in any case, a participative water, land and urban planning under a human rights-based approach and not market approach. It is my point of view. The pandemic, and this is the last reflection, the pandemic, like climate change, confront us with global crises and challenges that not only affect and will affect everyone particularly, but will not be solved without a global strategy. This is very important. However, the pandemic has shown us all this in a painful and shocking way in a very short time. The pandemic has made us individually and collectively feel our vulnerability and has shown us that no one will be safe until we all are covered. And certainly that which is felt is better and more quickly understood than simply understanding in our head, you know. So this time there was not even the possibility of shielding borders, for instance, or social conditions. The virus traveled, I used to say in this way, this time the virus traveled by plane, even in business class, I used to say. No? Unfortunately, we are still beginning to see that making vaccines a multi-billion-dollar business and hoarding the vaccines available in the richest country multiplies the appearance of new mutations of virus and definitely plunging the risk for everyone. So finally, even if it is not clear, but we are more and more conscious about this lemma that it is necessary leaving no one behind, the approach we have to adopt. And for the first time we are understanding here, but also here, because we are feeling the risk, we are feeling the vulnerability. As a result of this lesson, from my point of view, there is now a general growing consensus, regardless of ideologies sometimes and nationalities, on the need to strengthen our public health systems with the corresponding public financial effort as a collective challenge that is not for profit and that should leave basically no one behind. And this, I think, is for the first time we begin to have this kind of consensus. At the same time, on the other hand, it has become dramatically evident that access to drinking water, sanitation, and the necessary hygiene, including menstrual hygiene for women and girls, is the cornerstone of public health. So, I would therefore be necessary it would be necessary to develop watch services as part of the challenge of strengthening public health system as a global democratic challenge. This is the key issue. On the other hand, today the strategy adopted to face the pandemic and the post-pandemic, including the challenge of reactivating the economy and rebuilding the social cohesion of our societies, with the so-called Green New Deal, the last time, you know, of the 21st century, is based on quite important public funds. Unlike it is not the same situation that we had in the 2008 when we had the austerity strategies, no, imposed. But in fact, all the money, public money that we had was devoted to save from the bankruptcies, the banks, no? But at present, we are in a different context. And in fact, I think we have public funds. But the question is, what priority we give to those public funds with respect to this democratic challenge that is to reinforce, to strengthen the public health system, and particularly water and sanitation services. But it is a democratic responsibility to decide what to do with this. It is relevant or not. Or perhaps the new priority that is it in this way is to build more weapons, perhaps now with the war. But I continue to insist on this. There is no justification. It is not fair to talk about the financial gap for achieving the SDG 6. To say the financial gap, we have no public funds. We have public funds. But we must discuss what kind of priority we have, and if among other priorities we can devote a significant part of these public funds in reinforcing, enhancing, strengthening the public health systems, and in particular water and sanitation systems. And finally, also the conclusion, Switzerland, Europe should take perhaps propose a leadership, global leadership on this front by taking up the challenge of investment in water services worldwide, no? Because we can do it. Accelerating progress toward the SDG 6 in the face of public health risks and the ones arising from climate change as a democratic imperative, not as a window of business opportunity. This is my final conclusion. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Roland Blum, and on behalf of the Blue community, I had the honor and the joy, together with my colleague Arrojo-Aguda, to pick you up yesterday at the airport and to spend the whole day with you today all around the city. And I got the duty to moderate this discussion, probably because I have the longest legs to walk to your place for the microphone. So, who would break the ice and come up with a first remark, question, feedback to Pedro Arrojo-Aguda's input? Who dares? You dare. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pedro, for your insights. As a ambassador of the UN, I learned from you that you have big concerns how we use or how we see water from an economic point of view. And my question is, you mentioned that it's important to see the water issue from a democratic or from an ethic point of view. How would you measure our range from 0 to 10? On which level are we in Switzerland or in Europe on this economic or on this democratic level? And second question is, how could we improve from the view of Switzerland or Europe to get next steps to improve the level of to be more democratic or more ethic on how to use water on the world?
Well, if we think on the responsibilities in Europe I know, but I don't know very well all the countries. With respect to the citizens living in our countries, we can say that we have to improve, but we have made a good path from the beginning. I used to say something that is not just for Europe, but when I talk on priorities, and I am in Mexico, when I talk about this, we need to have this drinking water in the tap, must be safe drinking water. This is for the richest countries. For us, it's not possible. And they say, this is not true. Because in countries that I know, that could be European or others, when we were much more impoverished than you at present, when we had no money for having the water at home, we decided, the people who was living in these countries decided something, a priority. The safe drinking water, how do you say, fountain, in the square of the village, in the square of the district, for free, very safe drinking water for free for everybody. Before lightening the light in the street, before paving the streets, as the highest priority. We are poor, we are very impoverished, but this is the most important question for the city. Safe drinking water for everybody and for free. And they say, free? They say, yes, no problem. No one will keep more water than they need at home. It is very heavy. You write 50 liters per person per day? How much water do you take for this fountain to care to your home? Just the water you need. And as I said, if you see me to drink some water, be sure I will drink just the water I need. The same, I will have the oxygen I need. No more, 1 gram more, no. Perhaps I used to say wine or beer could be perhaps more than necessary, you know, but water. So in this sense, it is a priority. If we have this priority, we can get water for everybody. And then perhaps we have the water at home or not. So from this approach, for us, it's normal to have drinking water, safe drinking water, and if not, the court's arrival is not possible to think on non-potable water for everybody, no? So in this sense, it's important to appreciate. This is why when this morning we have visited the fountains in the city, for me it's a symbolic element, very important. We don't need now to drink water in the street, okay, but it's a symbolic element of this history, big priority. Public fountains for everybody. So for me this is good. And I'm not proud to be European, but we have made this path. But now, what happens? In Europe, I think Slovenia have recognized formally the human right to water. I think Slovenia, the only one. All the countries in the European Union, now we can do it with the transposition of the European Directive for Drinking Water. We're underway at present. We are in the parliaments, national parliaments, deciding on this. We can do it, but it is up to each country to decide. The directive has the content and the objectives is according to human right to water. But now each country can decide if specifically and concretely we recognize the human right. And it's not a secondary issue, it's not the only question to decide. But it's important because if you recognize as a human right, it has the lower, you know better than me and you can explain better, but there is a recognition of a specific obligation, international obligation with this human right recognition. So it's important, we can do it. Switzerland has done, I suppose not. It is not enough to recognize it, then you have to make laws and norms and financial means, for instance, for avoiding to make illegal to cut water for a family who is under poverty situation. The other day, I was talking with municipalities in states. 6 or 7 municipalities convoked to me, making a debate through the network. And in that time, I'm preparing this and consulting documentation. I realized that in the United States, 12% of the population received cuts, water cuts off because problem for paying for poverty. 12%, more than 30 million people in the United States, and it's not known. And more we have these kind of problems. So we need to recognize the human rights and to make rules, concrete rules, for avoiding these cut-offs, for precising a minimum amount of water, vital amount of water for guaranteeing to accomplish the human right to water and sanitation in each country. So we have to deal with this. We have made a path. but we must progress a little bit more. And of course, if we talk on our responsibility worldwide, then we have all the responsibility to do.
Yes, I think a threat to the human right of water is also the pollution. I would say the destruction of water by agriculture, by industry. How do you make a monitoring of this at the UN level?
This is a very sensitive issue in all the countries. When we talk about human rights and the priority, and you say, well, it is not against agriculture. For instance, in Spain at present, many, more and more every day, municipalities have no more anymore potable water in the top because of nitrates of the intensive cattle, macro farms and so on. And so we begin to have nitrates in all the aquifers. This is not more anymore potable, and this is against human rights. I am intervening, but I cannot discuss publicly on this before several governments saying with a letter, an allegation letter, but the rule for the rapporteur is when you address a complaint to a government with an allegation letter, you have to be very silent on the letter, nothing publicly, and wait for 2 months the answer or not from the government. From that point, 2 months later, the letter is public and they go into the debate. So I am preparing this kind of debates in Spain, in France, in different countries, also in Latin America, and I try to get it to prepare a discourse in which I'm not against cattle, because the small farmer doesn't give big problems. But the problem is when you concentrate, like close to Zaragoza at present, 30,000 cows in the same place, in a mega installation. So you are sure that you will contaminate the aquifers. And because it's impossible to spread this amount of how do you know? How do you say purines in Spanish? I don't know. Well, the returns. No? Huh? The caudal, yeah. It's impossible. So you will contaminate. So it is not against farmers. It is not agriculture. It's against the industrial agriculture, the industrial cattle industry, no? And distinguish. If you have the agriculture integrated with the cattle in more spread way, you know, in the way to make it integrative approach, in which the cattle is good for the farmer, good for the agriculture, and not a contamination source, no? This is the way to explain, but it's difficult to explain because in front of you, you have this kind of message that talking on human rights, you are against the development. But I think years ago it was very, very difficult to face this kind of argument. Now every day is more and more clear with climate change, with that it is not something. I used to say water is a good platform for understanding, pedagogical platform for understanding the convergence between social and environmental values. And I think it's possible to make an explanation and to be able to build and to grow agriculture or cattle or food without breaking the sustainability of aquatic ecosystems and others. But I am sure it's not easy. It's a conflictual space.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to read here that for the blue communities, it's really important having limestone water instead of bottled water. As you mentioned, this is a dream for us in Latin America. Many countries have no access to safe drinking water. They have running water at home, but they are not drinkable, no? And as you know too, many poor people all around the world pay more money for water. In the cities we pay less, and in the rural area we pay more, because we have to work around water and we have to pay the bills of the water. What do you think? What is the responsibilities for European countries and international cooperation to have a role and to play a role in the poor countries who are facing these problems?
Well, this year my two thematic reports, as you know, are devoted to human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation in rural, impoverished rural communities and in indigenous peoples. And this kind of situation is very frequent. I think that the only way to have safe drinking water affordable in rural areas in all the world is to recover the good ecological status of the aquatic ecosystems everywhere. Because, of course, in a city you can have polluted your surrounding, but you have enough richness. You have enough means for taking water from 30 kilometers around, far away, or to have a plant of desalination or inverse osmosis, and you can afford for it because a big population. But when you are a small community, isolated, more or less isolated, you are living there because there was and there is a river. The problem is when the river is polluted and you need to try to have the water from farther away, and you have no money for 20 kilometers pipeline is not possible. And you have not the money for pumping so long traject, and so on. So I think we need to recover, to make this agreement internationally, not just to have piped water or chlorinated, because very often you have chlorinated water, even piped water in some cases, not in rural areas. But for instance, in Lima, when I arrived to Lima, 9 million people, and they hear, because the trade unions prepare, each time I go, they prepare an assembly to me, and it's a great honor. The last time I came, they say, Pedro, before talking you, we have to give a bad news for all the citizens. 1,000 people in the meeting, you know, and the engineers from the company said, well, we have studied very deeply the question. We will not be able to give you safe drinking water for these 9 million people of citizens in Lima, because in the Cerro de Tamboraca, the lixiviation, the huge relaves, I don't know how do you say, is the big dams where the mining exploitation 30 years ago has left the toxic pollution inside, and there are lixiviation to the Rimac River with toxic, with heavy metals, and it's not possible to depurate this. So we will not be able to give you, we will give you, of course, piped water, chlorinated, but toxic. And this is more and more, it is growing in rural areas, and also with toxic from the agriculture, intensive agriculture, for instance, you know perfectly. The other day in San Jose, in Costa Rica, they said, well, we have national parks, but close to the national park with the piña, the pineapple, no, with toxics, and all the people is drinking in the rural areas toxic water because of the toxic pollution from this intensive agriculture. So we can have agriculture without toxics. I think we need it. And so not everything can be considered a progress initiative. And this change of minding, we need to do it. And We need not just money. It is not a problem of money. It is the same and here. Why you have the rivers here in a good state, safe state? Why? It was very expensive? No, because you have organized the laws, and if someone put a toxic in the river, he go to jail. It's not legal. It's prosecuted. So we need to be conscious of this and demand, exige this kind of attitude. It's a crime to do it. It's a crime in Paraguay and also in Zurich. Of course, in Zurich it's very clear, but it must be also in Paraguay. And even if the company is Spanish, from Switzerland, or from Mexico, it doesn't matter. It's a crime. And so I think we must go in this way. If not, I don't know how to do this. Because we are talking about 2 billion impoverished people that cannot afford and need the natural infrastructure that God, or I don't know who, has put beside their home, beside their village. And this is the infrastructure they need to have drinking water. And if we pollute it, we exhaust this source because of other priorities, the people will not have the human right to safe drinking water and sanitation. I don't find any solution. I don't know.
Arrojo-Aguda, we know that Switzerland is an important player at the international level when it comes to water. Access to water. Switzerland has a lot of cooperation. Switzerland is playing also an important role in the Global Water Forum in Dakar. What would you expect from Switzerland being an important player? What could be made better? In which kind of issue Switzerland must improve its actions to give a chance to make important steps improving access to water for all?
Well, with respect to Switzerland, I could say not just Switzerland, but Europe, the developed Europe, no? What can we contribute? What kind of responsibility we can assume, and we must assume perhaps, no? A big responsibility, we can do it because we have means. We are, for instance, blue communities. Blue communities, if you think about what does it mean human rights, they say, well, probably blue communities will be from Paraguay, from Brazil, from poor countries that are asking for human rights. Now, how about the Swiss talking about human rights? What about the Swiss or the European talking on public governance, democratic governance? This is very important because I used to say human rights is not just a question of solidarity with the most impoverished. It's the core, the most important thing of the democratic governance at global level. And if Switzerland or Europe, the European Union, assume this kind of conception, this kind of idea, this kind of concept of human rights as a democratic obligation, a democratic, we are concerned, but not because we are solidar, but we are Democrat. And we want to build a global democracy. But if we do it, we have to assume also the responsibilities because we have richness, possibilities. When we talk about the money that exists in the world, when we talk on the Green New Deal, we can discuss this in the parliaments about what is the objective, what is the priorities. We can do it. If you say to, I don't know, to Paraguay, what about the Green New Deal? What is it? We don't know anything about this. Public funds for the Green New Deal? No, we have no public fund for the Green New Deal. What is it? No? But in Europe, yes. In the United States, yes. In Canada, yes. In Australia, yes. In the World Bank, yes, we have. So we have the responsibility because now we know that this kind of challenges are not solved at national level. We have made global commitments. The SDG 6 is a worldwide commitment, and we have the responsibility to push it, to enhance the possibility of achieving this kind of commitment that we have made. With respect to Senegal, I don't know specific. I want to know better Africa because I cannot say I know Latin America, but it's so big, no? But quite well, and I feel comfortable, and I have the communication easy also in Spanish, Portuguese, but I don't know Asia, I don't know Africa, and it's so close to Spain, and I feel a little bit guilty. I need to know better, Africa. So the first thing, I want to make contacts. And with respect to the the two forums, the official and the alternative, I know others. I have been in Mexico, I have been in Marseille, I have been in Turkey. So I know what is the Global Water Forum. It is a spectacular global forum organized by the private sector. And so when I am invited, I go. If I can, I go. It's open to the discussion. I present and I will present. I have a very active agenda, invited by these and these and these and this. So I will be all the days talking and talking and talking. So in this sense, it's positive. But I used to say, and I will publish a video with this position to say, well, I'm grateful for the invitation in an official forum by one governor or another, or by the organizers, but what would you think if to discuss on what is the way to face the next pandemic or the present pandemic in the world, if you were convoked in a forum, in a world forum, by the pharmaceutic, how do you say, pharmacy? Industries. Instead of by the WHO, the United Nations properly. It will be strange, no? Not very nice. This is the case in water. But it's not the fault of the industry. It's not the fault of the private. It's the responsibility of the governments and the responsibility of the public sector and the United Nations. We have leave space in this space, in this question, and the private has occupied this space. So in this sense, I think I go, I explain, I think it exists, and I respect the existence, but I think it's not the right way. I don't want to be hard in the critic for the United Nations that I represent in some way, no? But of course, I will be also in the Alternative Forum, and I will be active also in the Alternative Forum as before to be appointed as special rapporteur, because these groups, these movements are really pushing, fighting for the human right to safe drinking water and sanitation.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro Arrojo-Aguda, for your insights, for your speech, and for your proposals, suggestions, what we can do here in Switzerland, how we can do something also for better access to water and to safe drinking water and sanitation. And I hope we can also do something with our Blue Community initiative. We come to the end of this event, but as you know, this is only the beginning of a series of events of the Water Week. That's why I would like to raise your awareness to other events. Next Sunday, there is a meditation in music and with text from different religions. It's going to take place here in the Water Church. Next Tuesday, on World Water Day 22, we are going to have a discussion whether water is a fundamental right or a commodity. It is a discussion with Esther Straub, Cantonal Council, and Dominique Waser from the City Council. So it has a lot to do with the topic we have heard from you about communication, financialization and privatization of water. Next Thursday, on March 24th, we are again here to present the Blue Community Initiative. So we are going to answer questions from interested persons, and it is a good opportunity to learn more about our initiative. And as you know now, in a few days, the World Water Forum is going to start in Dakar, Senegal, and also with Switzerland has an official presence in Dakar. Many other water experts, also from civil-based organizations, are going to participate, as well as scientists. On Wednesday, March 30th, Swiss participants, Ernst Bromeis and Christoph Lüthi from Erwaga, they inform us about current discussions, challenges and solutions in the domain of water. Furthermore, we offer several tours, guided tours, by water suppliers, for example, in Dietikon. Dietikon, the city water supplier, does open its doors on Saturday, March 26th. The whole day. There's the possibility to learn more about the water services. Yes, this list is not complete. You can find the program as mentioned before, or you can also find the whole list on the website bluecommunity.ch. Especially, I would like to say thank you for your committed and lively input and your readiness to answer to the questions we had. And I would like to hand over a small souvenir. This is the first Blue Community bottle. I hope she's a good company.
So nice, good.
So, thank you again for
Thank
being
you very
with us.
much for your. I spoke before with you, but I propose you publicly here. I would like to build with Blue communities in general, but could be, the reference would be in Zurich at present, and then we will see a bridge, a permanent bridge of communication with you, with an agenda, working together, and perhaps a meeting in the network every 5-6 months in order to follow up this agenda. So I propose to you, if you talk with other people and around you, to build up an agenda, discuss with me, and to prepare these questions in which, what can I do for you, for your work? You are the ones who are moving, and I can support, I can help, I can contribute. So I propose to you this possibility. We talk in the future, and we will see this bridge of communication bridge with you. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much for this suggestion.
Well, okay, then nothing else but to say thank you very much from our side, from the Blue communities in Zurich, to all those who participated, who helped to make this event and the whole week possible. For you, for your coming, Lisa for your presentation, the Water Church, Mr. Gessler, and the techniques, and everybody who made it possible. We hope to see you all again and bring your colleagues with you to be a bit more people in here. Spread the word about water, about the Blue communities. Thank you for being here, thank you for your interest, your questions, and have a good night and stay sober with clean water.